Hi everybody, and welcome to my channel, A Magical Life with Ayla. I'm Ayla Hillel, and today we're going to be talking about pagan holidays. So let's get started. So the interesting thing about pagan holidays is that if you look at the Christian word Sabbath and you look at the Hebrew word Shabbat and you look at the pagan word Sabbat, they all have the same root, and that root is to rest. So the holidays in ancient times were a time of feasting and partying and getting together with family and friends and catching up on news, and wasn't really so much about ritual, although I'm sure that they had the little rituals that they did. Ritual is considered work. Magic is considered work. So if you wanted to just have a party and hang out with your friends and eat a lot of food, that's perfectly acceptable. The holidays are actually into two different categories. If you look at, I think Llewellyn had a calendar for a while that had all of the feast days to different gods and goddesses, to different in different cultures, and for different reasons. They had, and I mean, every single day was a feast day. Gerald Gardner, who is the father of modern day Wicca, put our calendar together, the calendar that most of us follow now, with 8 holidays. Now, of those 8 holidays, 4 of them were actually observed in Celtic lands, so Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. And then the other 4 are in 2 different categories. So 2 of those 4 are solstices, and 2 of them are an equinox. Now, a solstice is, we think of it as the longest day or the longest night. We have a winter solstice and we have a summer solstice. And the winter solstice happens roughly around the 21st of December, and the summer solstice happens roughly 20, 21, 22 of June. So the winter solstice, we call Yule, was largely observed by our Norse brothers and sisters, so the Norse Germanic brothers and sisters. And then the summer solstice was just something that all cultures around the world observed, and they still do. So these solstices are kind of like the longest night, the longest day. So when I first started studying this idea of the longest day and the longest night, I thought that there was something I had been missing, that this time of darkness in the winter, this day of the longest night in the winter, was going to be very noticeable. And this time of the longest day in the summer would be very noticeable. And actually, it's a matter of minutes, not hours, that we experience a longer day and what's happening, or a longer night. And what's happening is the earth is tilting one way or another. So in the winter time, the earth tilts on its axis backwards I think about 23 degrees or so. I'll have to look that up and I'll come back and do a correction. And it kind of tilts the earth away from the sun a little bit. And this is why we experience much cooler temperatures and more rain and snow and ice and stuff like that. In the summertime, and I think I may have these backwards. In the summertime, it tilts back because in the summertime, we are heading back into the dark part of the year. So in the summertime, I think it tilts forward, and then in June, and this is why we get the warmer temperatures. But the interesting thing about watching the calendar for the solstices and the equinoxes is that in December, when we have the winter solstice, it's actually leading us into the warmer part of the year. In June, when we have the summer solstice, it's actually leading us back into winter. So that almost sounds counter to what we would think of. We would think that the summer solstice would lead us into the summer. The summer happens after that because then we have some harvest festivals and we have a lot of warm weather. But it's actually, if you pay attention, minute by minute, each day after summer solstice, the days start getting a little bit shorter, a little bit shorter, a little bit shorter. Same way with winter solstice. After we pass that equinox, or that solstice place, the winter solstice, the days start getting, just by moments, start getting a little longer. We have more daylight, a little more daylight, a little more daylight, a little more daylight. So it's kind of odd. I had to really think about it when I first came onto this path and remind myself that summer leads us into the darkness, and the darkness of winter leads us into the summer, into the light of the summer. So that's the winter solstice and the summer solstice. Then we have equinoxes. Now, equa means equal, and nox is night. So we have a spring equinox and we have a fall equinox. And this is when the earth is shifting again, and we get kind of this balance between day and night. And there again, it's not even really something that you notice. It's moments instead of minutes or hours. It's moments. I haven't really looked up like the astronomical details of all of this. I just know enough to be able to tell you this is what an equinox is and this is what a solstice is. So we have spring equinox and fall equinox. And there again, that's the earth is shifting. It's shifting us out of one. In spring equinox, we're leaving winter, coming into the spring. So the equinox kind of announces the arrival of spring. And the fall equinox is when we have a little bit before and a little bit after fall equinox. Happens in September. And this is when we have a lot of harvest festivals, and we're doing our harvesting and we're getting ready for the winter. And that's kind of like what the fall equinox is all about. It's an announcement that we are getting ready for winter. Now, the spring equinox is, pagans call this Ostara. And so this is our time of enjoying the spring, and it's symbolized by eggs and rabbits and beautiful, decorations, pastel decorations, and that happens kind of like the middle of March. And there again, it's an astronomical event. So many pagans just celebrate it on the 21st of March. I have always tried to look it up, and even if we celebrated it on the 21st, let's say Sunday was a good day and to do a celebration, and Sunday happened to be the 21st, but the equinox actually fell on the 23rd. I would state that. I would say, so it's okay whenever you have your celebration, but I think it's really important to know when the solstices and the equinoxes actually happen. And then our other equinox is in September, and there again, like September 21st, 22nd, 23rd. I look it up. I look it up on a scientific website, and I don't call it Mabon. The fall equinox is, pagans refer to it as Mabon, and when I'm looking it up, what I ask Google is, when is the fall equinox? And that way I know exactly what day that is on. Exactly, they give you a lot of information about it, so you kind of have to decide where you're at on that. Now, the interesting thing about Mabon is that the Celts really only celebrated 4 holidays. So they celebrated the very, very, very beginnings of spring, which we call Emulk. This happens on February 1st. And then they celebrated Lunasa, which happens on August 1st. And then they celebrated Samhain. Okay, I'm missing one. So we have Emulk and Beltane, which happens on May 1st. Okay, Beltane. And then Lunasa, which is it's the first harvest festival. And then Samhain. Those were the only 4 holidays that the Celts celebrated. Okay, so those are on our new modern calendar. And then interspersed in between them was the solstices and the equinoxes. So officially, we sort of celebrate 8 holidays. Now, Mabon, which happens in the middle of September, it's the second, it's autumn equinox. It's the second equinox of the year. Is kind of an interesting holiday, and I always point this out when I'm talking about Mabon. So Mabon is kind of the end of the Celtic calendar, and then we start the new year with Samhain. For the Celts, Samhain was the beginning of the year. For our Norse Germanic brothers, Yule was the beginning of the year. So I like to point it out that in between the harvest of Lunasa and the harvest of Mabon, those 6 weeks are kind of not part of the old calendar and not part of the new calendar. So we're in an in-between place. And this is any in-between place is an interesting place to be. It's very powerful with what I like to call in-between magic. So in-between magic is, you want to move, but you haven't moved yet. You want to have a baby, but you're not pregnant yet. You want to change jobs, but you haven't done that yet. So you're kind of in that place where you've made up your mind what you want, but you haven't really started materializing those desires. So it's a very powerful in-between place. And I like to encourage people to really take advantage of the place in between Lunasa in August and Mabon in September. So there's that 6 weeks again. And this is a powerful time. So on my website, I'm going to go into, each holiday is going to have its own page, and I'm going to go into details. If you are part of the Facebook, our Rowan Tree Facebook page, you notice that there for a while I was trying to put up books of the holidays. So Book of Imbolc, or Book of Samhain, or Book of Mabon. And so on my website, under the little button up at the right side where it says magic, it's going to drop down. And one of the things is going to be Pagan Holidays. And each one of those holidays is going to have its own page, which is going to contain all the decorations, all of the correspondences, recipes, colors, everything that you would need to celebrate the holidays. So what I want to do on this video quickly is talk about the holidays. So, like I said, for the Celts, the first holiday of the year is Samhain. And many of the holidays are multifaceted, meaning that they have various meanings. And when you have a celebration, like the Rowan Tree has always had celebrations for these, you try to hit as many of those variations as possible. So Samhain is the new year. It's the new year for the Celts. It's also the last harvest. So the first harvest that we have is August 1st, which is Litha. The second harvest is autumn equinox, which happens roughly in the middle, 21, 22, 23 of September, depending on what's happening in the universe at the time. And then the last harvest is Samhain. So Samhain is the first, the beginning of the year, the last harvest, and very importantly, Samhain is a time that we remember and honor our loved ones who have crossed back over to the other side. This is one of the ways that we keep them alive, and is by keeping their memory alive. And so we light candles and we put things on the altar that have to do with our loved ones, and we talk about them. During the ritual is a time to talk about good memories with your loved ones, and funny things that happened and poignant things that you remember. So this is a kind of a somber holiday, sort of. And then afterwards we have a party. So, we go from that somber remembrance to a time of celebration. And I'm sure that our loved ones who have crossed over would want it that way. So I always start with Samhain. Now, the next one is Yule. Yule is the winter solstice. It's a time when our Earth shifts backwards away from the sun a little bit. And for the Norse, our Norse cousins and our brothers and sisters, this was a big holiday. And the Norse had this very cool society where they were very concerned about their brothers and sisters. And so in December, during the celebration, they would have what they called the Thing. It was the grand meeting of the year, and they just simply called it the Thing. And one of the things that happened during the Thing is that they would take a tally of, because the harvest is all done by now, slaughter's all done by now, and they would take a tally of what each family clan had. If Sven lost a cow that year to disease, then his family was going to hurt through the summer, right? Through the winter. And, if somebody didn't have a good yield in their crops, then they were going to hurt through the winter. And so what the Norse culture society would do is they would even everything out. They would make sure that everybody contributed a little bit to the fellow who didn't have a good yield. And there would be meat and milk available to Sven's family because one of his cows died. So this is the celebration of Yule. It's the celebration of the solstice, because our Earth does this big thing to accommodate life on Earth. So it's moving back and forth towards the sun, away from the sun, so that we can have a colder time, a winter where there's rain and there's snow and there's lots of water and things are gestating in the ground, waiting for the sun to return. So this is a very significant holiday. So that's Yule. After Yule is February 1st, is Imbolc. Now, Imbolc is is an amazing holiday because it's like in the dead of winter. And actually, it's not in the dead of winter. It's February. It's getting long towards the end of winter. Um, but it happens on February 1st. Excuse me. And if you go outside during this time, you are going to see little itty bitty signs of spring. So you might see these little teeny tiny beginnings of buds on branches, or you might see the beginning of a bulb starting to stick out of the ground. You got to know where to look. You have to know where to look for these things. Very beginnings of spring. And it's also to celebrate and to honor Goddess Bria. When you read that word, what I'm going to post in my website is the essays that I wrote for each one of the holidays. Bria looks like the word Bridget. And if you say Bridget, that is fine. Pronounce it however you feel comfortable with. Celtic language being what it was, Gaelic, a lot of things look a certain way, but are pronounced completely different. So I am Irish, and so I wanted to know what the pronunciation was. If you say Samhain, that's fine. I know what you mean. Everybody around you is going to know what you mean. Some people say Samhain, some people say Samhain. It doesn't matter. I don't want this to be a path of dogma where you're wrong if you don't say something the right way. It's like, come from your heart with this path, and that's good. So Imbolc is also, and see, I just said it could be Imbolc. The proper way to say it is Emolc. It's hard to say. So if you get that B in there, that's okay. So this is to honor Goddess Bria, who was the Celtic goddess of firesmithing, poetry, and childbirth. She is a goddess of the hearth. And on my website, I keep going back to the website. In the Book of Magic, down at the bottom, there's going to be some mythology down there, and Goddess Bria is definitely going to be some of that in that mythology. So our next holiday after February 1st comes in the middle of March, and it's Ostara. And by Ostara, in the middle of March, in Oregon, we are starting to see the daffodils. Once the daffodils arise, I get giddy every year when the daffodils show up, because that means cold weather is going to start letting up, some little bit more warmer weather is going to start coming. We're headed towards spring. The holiday that happens in March, Ostara, is definitely a spring. We are in spring at that point. And Oster is the goddess that we honor during the time of Ostara. Now, she is a Norse goddess. So that's an interesting thing to take note of. Fertility, childbirth, new life, that's what Ostara is all about. So then we move on into May 1st, which is Beltane. Beltane is the full-on, fullest expression of spring. And Beltane is another fertility with an emphasis on sex, because you can't have fertility and babies. You can't have babies without sex. So this is a time to just honor all of those lusty, loving, fiery, passionate type of emotions and human behavior. And we dance the maypole during Beltane, and the maypole symbolizes the phallus and the lingam and the yoni, and it's a wonderful celebration, very loud and raucous, and it's a good time. So that happens on May 1st. Then our summer solstice comes June 20th, 21st, 22nd, whatever the astronomical charts say. This is the tipping again of the planet one way or another, and we call it Litha. And Litha is a fire festival, full-on summer. I mean, it's happening in the middle of June, and this is a time to celebrate the sun and some of the sun gods and sun goddesses, and it is definitely a celebration. And so that happens middle of June, whenever the charts say they're supposed to happen. So then July, we don't really have a holiday in July, but August 1st. So we still have that 6 weeks in between the holidays. August 1st is Lunasa, and this is when we honor and celebrate the sun god, the Celtic sun god Lu, and his mother. And I know I'm slaughtering this name. It's a Celtic name. Tailtook, I think is her name. So the story goes that he wanted to have summer games. Lu was Tail's stepson, and they adored each other. And he wanted to have some summer games, have some friends over and have some summer games. And it was said that she cleared a very large piece of property so that they could have these summer games, and then she died of exhaustion. Now, some mythologies say that Tail was actually Mother Earth, was actually Gaia, is what the Greco-Romans called her, Gaia, that she was actually Mother Earth. So there's a lot of games happen during the holiday of Lunasa. Lunasa is the first harvest of grains, so like corn and wheat and barley and this grains, basically. So that happens on August 1st. Now, so then our next holiday is 6 weeks later in the middle of September. And this is Mabon, and this is the second harvest. And this is an equinox. So there again, the planet is shifting. It's doing its thing to accommodate all of the life that is on planet Earth. This is also the second harvest of grapes and apples and pears and stuff like that. That's Mabon. And so the feasts usually, like with Lunasa, the feasts really center around grainy dishes and breads. With Mabon, it's fresh fruits and vegetables dishes for the holiday. And there again, I'm going to put some recipes in the book, the holiday books. So that's Mabon in the middle of September. So then our next holiday is 6 weeks later on October 31st. So the Celts, many cultures around the world, marked a day from sunset of one day to sunset of the next day. So some people will say, oh, Samhain's on the 31st. Okay, if Samhain is on the 31st for you, that's fine. Samhain is actually from the evening of the 31st, from sunset of the 31st to sunset of November 1st. So if you say it's on the 31st, that's fine. If you say it is on November 1st, that's fine also. I happen to be a big fan of Halloween. I happen to be a big fan of handing out candy to kids. So I like to, any time that I was scheduling a holiday celebration for Samhain, I would try to make it on November 1st so that everybody could either take their kids trick-or-treating the night before or stay home like I do and hand out candy. So just know, if somebody says, oh, Samhain's on the 31st, that's fine. That's fine. Let's not make an issue of that. And Samhain is on November 1st. that's fine as well, because it's actually kind of both. Um, so like I said earlier, Samhain is the Celtic New Year. It is the Celtic Day of the Dead. It's when we remember our loved ones, our friends, and our family that have crossed over. And it's also the last harvest of things like squash and zucchini, stuff like that. So that's where we get the pumpkin from. And I'm going to include some history of Samhain. It's fascinating. And so that Samhain is the first holiday. So we just went through all of the holidays. And we have a holiday every 6 weeks. And once you go through the wheel of the year, so us magical folks us pagans call these 8 holidays the wheel of the year. Once you go through it, you begin to develop feelings for the holidays. Fragrances and the taste of certain foods and the smell of things. Well, that would be fragrance. And just a feeling. There's a feeling that comes with each one of the holidays. And if you're not part of a magical community, if you can just get together with some friends, that's the best way to go. Solitary celebrations are good. I think being with a couple friends or being with your community is even better. So that's about all I have to say about the holidays. The wheel of the year goes very fast. Time goes very fast. Time goes fast anyway. You guys know this too. But when you start jumping 6 weeks from one holiday to the next, because at the end, on October 31st, November 1st, I start planning for Yule. And so that time goes really fast because you're getting ready for the next holiday. You're always getting ready for the next holiday. And if you celebrate all of the moons in between there, then every other month you're going to have a moon and a holiday. Every other month you're going to have just a moon. So it gets very busy. And that's all I want to say about the holidays. There's going to be more on my website. The Book of Magic on my website is the way I'm setting it up, the way I'm organizing it is a lot of information. And so I have all the templates there. And every time I put information in each one of those headings, I'm going to put a little note that says updated, so there's something in there you can go and look at. I think that's probably the best way to do this. But I want you guys to have all the information you need to not only manifest your reality, but to have a rich, magical life. So we will see you again soon. Blessed be.